How much is Trump's new social media company worth? Traders can't decide. So this will be an interesting take. Obviously, I'm reading from an article here. If you're watching this video, this isn't my opinion, but let's go through the article and have a look. And maybe I'll add my comments in here and there, and I'll try and make that obvious. So, traders are struggling to place a consistent value on Donald Trump's new social media venture, a business that hasn't offered much in the way of details, but one that supporters think of destined to take off. Shares and warrants of Digital World Acquisition Corp, DWAC, the special purpose acquisition company that is merging with Trump Media and Technology Group. So basically, if you don't know what Digital World Acquisition Corp is, basically it's a SPAC. So basically how these SPACs work is they'll create the SPAC first, they'll release it. So it's basically a special purpose acquisition. And basically they'll release it at a value of around, say, $10 a share. People will buy in, speculating what the company is, and then basically that whole share or that public company is a blank check, figuratively speaking, and they merge with another company, and then eventually that's how that company goes public. Has been a very popular way for smaller companies or to go public, or companies that feel it's a little bit premature for them to go public themselves, to get involved, which I think is really beneficial. If you go back 5 years ago, between 5 and 10 years ago, there was a period where a lot of companies were very scared to go public. And I do think that this was disappointing for employees that jump in early. I know a lot of these technology companies, engineers will jump in and they will own shares. And if that company never goes public, they never get an opportunity to realize the potential income from those shares. So it is important that companies do go public as they get big enough, in my opinion. So if it's a way to get these smaller companies to go public earlier or at all, I think that's positive. The SPAC's shares have traded around $80 in recent days, preserving a 700% rally since the deal was announced in October. They are up more than 60% this year, bucking the broad sell-off that has sent SPACs and stocks that are popular among individual investors such as GameStop Corp tumbling. So the stock's current price implies a valuation of several $billion for Mr. Trump's startup, a remarkable figure considering little known about the company other than its plans to launch a new social media platform called Truth Social and capitalize on his following. The company said in December that it had $1 billion in commitments from investors as part of a SPAC deal, and that California Republican Rep Devin Nunes was leaving the House of Representatives to become the company's chief executive. While shares and options that allow the holder to buy more shares at a specific price in the future have surged, warrants tied to Digital World have lagged behind, baffling some traders who argue they are mispriced relative to the stock and expected the gap to close. Warrants are similar to options but originate from the SPAC. They can only be exercised after the company's SPAC deal closes. Warrants typically have a strike price of $11.50, meaning the holder would pay $11.50 to receive a share of the company. But DWAC warrants are trading around $27, compared with the stock's $80. Some analysts say they are undervalued because, assuming the deal closes with the stock price roughly where it is now, warrant holders would pay $11.50 per share and could immediately sell at the market price of several times that. By that logic, some analysts say the warrants should roughly trade at the stock price minus $11.50 or in the high 60s instead of the high 20s. Several factors are likely holding down warrant prices, traders said, namely uncertainty about the deal closing with the stock at the current levels, meaning the price there. Trump Media and Technology Group still has to release its financial ownership structure before the deal can be completed and the warrants can be exercised. That process can take several months and could show that Mr. Trump's company is far from becoming a profitable business. I think anybody going into this deal thinking that this is a brand new social media company that hasn't actually launched yet is anywhere near profitable has lost their mind, let's be honest. The Securities and Exchange Commission is also investigating the merger. The gap between shares and warrants is evident that individual investors are driving up more well-known shares and options, some analysts said. Digital World stock ticker, DWAC, has been trending on some social media platforms in recent weeks, and its trading volumes at times have been comparable to those of much larger companies. This is the meme stock of all meme stocks because it's Trump, said Matthew Tuttle, whose firm Tuttle Capital Management runs a few Spac exchange-traded funds. Meme stocks gained popularity among online traders for reasons other than their business prospects, as GameStop and others have in just the past year. Call options tied to DWAC shares jumping to $90 or $100 have been among the most widely traded in recent days, according to SIBO Global Markets data. More sophisticated traders are likely trading the warrants, analysts said, tempering their expectations about where the stock will trade when the deal closes. The warrant price is still unprecedented for SPACs and implies the valuation of Trump Media and Technology Group in the billions, albeit a much smaller one than the stock price does. The announced valuation in the deal in October was $875 million, including debt. The $1 billion in investor commitments for the company announced in December also were based on a big discount to the current stock price, potentially offering those investors a risk-free profit if the shares stay elevated. Traders expecting the gap between the shares and the warrants to close in the coming months could buy the warrants and try to short the stock by borrowing shares, selling them, and aiming to buy them back at lower prices. The challenge is that wild trading in DWAC has driven the fee to borrow shares to exorbitant rates, according to the data from technology and data analytics firm S3 Partners. That high borrowing fee is one reason the number of shares shorted is still relatively small, even though it had ticked higher lately, investors said. The SPAC, such as DWAC, is a shell company that raises money and begins trading publicly with its sole intent of merging with a private firm to take it public. This is what I explained earlier in the article. After a merger is announced and regulators approve the deal, it gets completed and the private company replaces the SPAC in the stock market. Such deals have become popular alternatives to traditional IPOs, initial public offerings, since 2020, in part because they permit the business projections that aren't allowed in IPOs. Shares with many SPACs surged alongside meme stocks early last year, but have since tumbled, with investors bracing for higher interest rates and retreating from speculative trades. Yet Digital World shares remain high, confounding many on Wall Street. It's tough to understand, said Julian Climaco, who announced managers of a SPAC-focused fund at Accelerate Financial Technologies. So, thanks for that, everyone.